Hi guys, and first off, Hilmar, it's a huge pleasure to actually have you here with us. I know it's like a long flight for you going back home, so like it's really a pleasure for us
Yeah,
to
happy
have
to
you
be here.
Yeah, cool.
You are a lot the reason why I'm here.
Well, you're a huge fan. It's actually
Yeah.
a big part of the rebrand. If you look at the back of the shirt, it's
Yes,
like
yeah.
let's talk about Rama's
yeah.
World. So
Yeah, I need to learn the new name.
Sovrun. It's
Sovrun.
easier to pronounce versus
Sovrun,
like
yeah.
so yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have much time. I'll get right to it. Like we first heard about like Eve, from before, but recently looked into it like really deeply. We've had conversations around, how games really need economies, but with Eve, like the game is the economy, right? How do you respond to that? And I guess like how has that shaped like, alliances, organizations, and do you think that can be applied to emerging markets like the Philippines?
So there's an aspect of what I've noticed in a lot of teams that come to me with like Web3 pitches is that people are creating an economy. And that's actually not how we did it with Online. We created a world, and the world was full of problems. And the economy is the answer to the problems of the world. So first you in a way create nature, and then the players come and they create the economy. And the economy is solving problems in nature. A lot of this in Eve is that the minerals are all over the place. You need to mine them and gather them to make a spaceship. Then you need to occupy territory so your enemies are not taking them. So how we made the economy was that first we created the world, and then we sort of made the world full of asymmetries, if we use complicated terminology. And then people came in to solve those asymmetries and solve the topology of the world. So we're now doing that even more so with Eve. So when you do create the world like that, and if there's any lesson for EVE Online, the problem statement was not big enough. Like the current player base of EVE Online after 20 years almost has solved the problem statement of the world. So now we're going for a much bigger world with a much bigger problem and a much bigger set of tools to fix it. So we will need a lot more people and a lot more people to organize, create social structures, create smart assemblies and new features, etc. And what I think you guys shown us the most is that those people can come from all over the world, like way more than that we were imagining we were making EVE Online. We're largely just in Iceland making EVE Online, and the country has more sheep than people. We had very sort of naive view of the world. But when you guys came in and won our hackathon, coming from the Philippines, and I mean, we don't have a lot of EVE players in the Philippines, but we have the best coders so far in eFrontier from the Philippines. Then, yeah, rock on. And thus I'm here. What the hell is going on here? Gabi has been telling me this all along, but now, like, it's for real. So that has opened up our mind in a big way. And I think when you see a country like the Philippines that have so many smart people, and maybe they don't have agency to find things to do for economic benefit, or any benefit really, thus building a virtual world that everyone has the same access to. It is full of huge problems. People that do solve the problem, they will be able to build a business in that world. That is one of the parts we've been using this sort of building it on top of a blockchain, having a token and all these things, is the current third-party developers of EVE Online can't really build a business model. And some of what they have built really is core to the experience, but they have to use like Google Ads to pay for their AWS bill, etc. So when you guys came in and created the tournament system, and okay, amazing, now you could just be the esports organization for eFrontier, just like we have to do on EVE Online. We run the Alliance tournament, which we've been running for 20 years, but now maybe Sovrun just takes care of sports in eFrontier. And I think that is amazing, and you guys have extremely shown the power of that model.
That's really amazing, and that's what we wanted to actually do in the first place, right? I would say like the general Philippine population is always on the hunt for other opportunities, right? Precisely why 11% of the Filipinos are actually overseas Filipino workers, and they actually look for or go to abroad for opportunities, right? And recently, Emphasis, YGG, and team coined the term like Metaverse Filipino Worker, where now instead of like going physically to other places, you can find these opportunities within the digital space. Now, a lot of games or even like metaverse experiences do not really champion this. Do you imagine that eventually you guys will pave a path towards more and more like games or worlds venturing into this kind of setup? Or what is your vision as a whole for the industry?
So if we go back to like my home country, Iceland. Iceland is an island in the middle of the Atlantic. It's very expensive to go to and from Iceland. And export things into and out of Iceland is very expensive. When the internet came, it was like a huge liberation for Iceland, because now Iceland can make things that don't have to go on a plane or a ship, which is very expensive. And that created a big internet boom in Iceland. We are a product of that. EVE Online literally would never be made if it weren't for the internet, and it never would have been made in Iceland if it weren't for the internet. So what you are describing here is a bit of a similar situation. A person in the Philippines has a certain amount of agency in the Philippines, but if you add the internet on top of it, the agency, what you can do, is now on a global scale. And then you have to find, okay, what can you really do? And as you were saying, a lot of people, 11% of the population are working kind of remote for probably mostly Western company. But now we're building an experience where you can be working in space from the Philippines, building amazing things in space for the whole planet. And not only that, but you can also build a business model around it. So this was kind of a fantasy until you guys came and just made it real. And it's not like we have no idea you guys existed. You just came and you showed and you won the hackathon against like pretty legit teams. Yeah. So voila, you just like, okay, thesis proven. Now let's get busy building.
Right. No, I think the idea of a permissionless composable world within autonomous world is something that we're really amazed at, right? Like, personally, like, how do you imagine the future evolving, especially around like autonomous worlds?
So I mean, we're obviously, like with many of these things, super early. Like it's you need to go into science fiction to kind of get a model, and you also need to like see elements where we have seen these kind of things happening in the online. So even if you can't start a business for profit inside the online, it doesn't stop people to try. So we see there is a big demand, whether people are upfront about it, for trading items in MMO, for building businesses around MMOs. But legal framework and technical framework and even the imagination is very early about thinking about it. But if there's one thing blockchains and crypto have shown, they have created like legal chapters in each country, or most countries, where they explain how digital assets and the real world can interoperate. This is actually the most useful thing about this whole thing, is that the legal definition of digital asset and the real world have been more well defined than if you look at game and game assets. Of course, we exist somewhere in between, but that creates a powerful concept where you can be, in a way, not only a citizen of the Philippines, you can be a citizen in EVE Online or EVE Frontier. So you can exist on planet Earth and in space at the same time. And that just gives you more agency as a person. Now you have a lot more opportunity. And that's why we're making sure we make the game hard enough. We might be making it too hard. So that there is demand for people that, they can either do kind of simple work, you also need to mine, or they can do like run and create a tournament system like you guys did. So like we want to create this full spectrum where you can find opportunities to solve the problems of the universe that present so many opportunities up and down the chain. So you maybe start just by playing EVE Online in space, doing a bit of mining and all that. Before you know it, you're leading hundreds of thousands of people into war for world domination. And some of them might be like highly trained spaceship athletes from the tournament system of Sovrun.
One of the more interesting things that I actually saw with the presentation is that a huge majority is actually here to help, right? Like within the Eve Online community.
Yeah.
And that is a huge parallel to what exists within the crypto community right now, where everyone is actually very open to help, which is in contrast to like more traditional Web2 businesses. They're always like, oh, it's proprietary. We're not here to actually help. And I can't help but like think that maybe the blockchain technology, specifically within gaming, is actually made for like games like Eve Frontier or like Eve Online. But yeah, like
So I mean, economies are about matching solutions and problems together. Like this is how we invented the economy. Like, okay, we can't learn all how to make arrows and how to make wheat and how to bake bread. We can't be masters of all trade. So we have to specialize. And once we have specialized, now we need to match specialization to the problem. Then we have a team of specialists which now need to be matched to a problem. This is why the economy exists. It's about like problems and solutions. So again, when we create the frontier, we want to make sure the problem is big enough. So you need all the specialities you can imagine. But the big enough is also, it needs to be hard enough and punishing enough. And that's another lesson from EVE Online, and you're kind of echoing it with the crypto community, is that collective suffering is a big part of community building. And I think I've seen that again and again here in States. There is an aspect of collective suffering built communities. So we are building the world such that you will suffer from playing. It's a punishing game, super hard. The other people there are super skilled, so it's punishing. And in that environment, again, there's just a lot of people that need help.
well, our time's up, but like last question for me. I know we had a conversation about like Eve Online having its own like GDP and all of that. Do you imagine like the digital world, I guess like having bigger economies than maybe even the US?
So it's interesting. So Iceland has GDP per capita of $78,000. It is $2,000 less per capita than the US. We're about to beat the US. Iceland, 80 years ago, had the smallest GDP per capita in the world. I looked it up. Philippines is about $3,000 per capita as GDP. So the Philippines has $3,000 per capita. Iceland has $78,000 per capita. That created almost overnight. Iceland is on a big tear right now, and the Philippines is like untapped potential. So I think what will happen more and more as people have more agency to build in virtual worlds, etc., a lot of the GDP of countries will actually come from people contributing to autonomous virtual worlds. So as you sit in the Philippines and work in space for eFrontier, you are in a way creating GDP of your country. So the better you do in eFrontier, you're raising the average GDP per capita in the Philippines. That is what I think will happen.
That's awesome. Oh, thank you again, Hilmar, and it's been a great pleasure.
Thank you.